Those who know the right questions must reach those asking the wrong ones, and sometimes even the lost. I protect my identity because truth has a body count. Welcome to the Anarchist File. You've been told the grind is enough, that if you stack your cash, max your hustle, post the screenshots, and keep your head down, you'll feel complete. You'll have the apartment, the car, the status, the followers. You'll get the dopamine spikes of achievement and pretend it adds up to fulfillment. But the quiet truth is this: it doesn't. The grind leaves you hollow. You can fake it with another bonus check, another pair of sneakers, another vacation selfie, but when the lights are out and the phone is off, the emptiness is louder than ever. Men are waking up to this. Young men especially. They're looking around at a culture that promised them purpose through careerism, hookups, and endless consumption, and they're realizing it was a lie. That SYU re-seeing something almost unthinkable just 10 years ago. Guys in their 20s, men in their early 30s, showing up in church pews, walking into Bible studies, plugging into faith communities, not because it's trendy, not because it's easy, but because they're starving for something the grind can't deliver. And let me be blunt, that terrifies the system. Because a man anchored in faith cannot be broken. He cannot be seduced by every new shiny distraction. He cannot be herded by propaganda. He cannot be reduced to a consumer profile, because his loyalty is higher than the marketplace. Faith is dangerous in an empire built on nihilism. That's why every cultural signal mocks it. Faith is called primitive, anti-science, oppressive, outdated. The ruling order prefers you bow to careers, to identities, to brands. They don't want you kneeling in prayer. They want you kneeling to their agenda. But here's the twist. Their substitutes don't satisfy. Workaholism collapses into burnout. Hedonism collapses into despair. Consumerism collapses into debt. And when that collapse comes, men start searching. Faith is not just about rules or rituals. It's about transcendence, the sense that your life is tied to something bigger than your ego, your paycheck, your feed. It's about community, a tribe of people who will carry you when you falter and hold you accountable when you drift. It's about continuity, the knowledge that you are not floating alone in history, but part of a story stretching backward and forward, from ancestors to descendants. This is why the grind alone fails, because it offers no answer to the ultimate questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is this suffering for? The market doesn't care. The hustle doesn't care. Social media doesn't care. But faith does. And men are waking up to the reality that without it, all the hustle in the world still leaves you empty. The question we'll dig into is simple. Is chasing money and success enough? Or could faith and community provide the deeper meaning you've been missing? This isn't a sermon. I'm not here to tell you what denomination to join or what doctrine to memorize. I'm here to speak plainly. Men need purpose, and faith might be the last unbroken source of it left in a culture that has burned through everything else. The grind can build wealth, but faith can build men. And right now, we need men more than we need wealth. Grind culture sells you the illusion of purpose. It dangles the promise. If you work harder, longer, smarter. If you never sleep, if you sacrifice everything at the altar of hustle, you'll feel complete. And for a while, it works. The first bonus check feels electric. The first car you buy cash makes you strut. The first vacation where you drop 10 grand on a whim feels like winning. But the high fades. Always. And the emptiness creeps back in. Because grind culture confuses fuel with destination. Money is fuel. Status is fuel. Freedom can be fuel. But without a destination, all the fuel in the world just burns out in circles. You become the guy with 3 Rolexes who still stares at the ceiling at night wondering what the point is. The secular script doubles down on this lie. It tells you that once you are freed from oppressive tradition and archaic religion, you'll be liberated. You can invent yourself, chase your truth, make your own morality. On paper, that sounds empowering. In practice, it's a disaster. When every man is his own god, every man is also his own prison. Look around. Do men look liberated? Do they look fulfilled? Or do they look anxious, addicted, weak, medicated, porn-soaked, suicidal? That's not liberation. That's collapse. And it's collapse by design, because the market thrives on men with no roots. A man who believes in nothing will believe in whatever ad he sees next. A man with no tribe will rent one online. A man with no faith will worship politics, brands, or himself. And all of those are profitable. Faith is the one thing that resists this machine. Because real faith anchors you to something higher than dopamine. It tells you, your life is not random. Your suffering is not pointless. You are not just a consumer. You are a steward, a builder, a servant of a story that stretches beyond your little ego, and that anchor changes everything. It changes how you work. Instead of grinding for status or envy, you work as stewardship, to provide, to build, to serve. It changes how you suffer. Instead of collapsing into despair when hardship comes, you frame it as trial, as purification, as training. It changes how you live. Instead of drifting from vice to vice, you walk a narrow path with direction. That's why men are being pulled back to faith, not because they want to be controlled, but because they want to be free. Free from the hamster wheel of consumerism. Free from the anxiety of self-invention. Free from the loneliness of secular freedom. Faith doesn't chain you, it roots you, and roots are what let you grow into something greater. This is where grind culture fails most spectacularly. It offers you wealth without meaning. It offers you success without significance. It offers you followers without fellowship. And men are realizing it's a scam. They're realizing that purpose cannot be purchased, and transcendence cannot be manufactured. The ruling class hates this realization. They want you chained to the grind, because a man who only believes in the grind can be managed. He can be taxed. He can be replaced. He can be threatened with termination. But a man who kneels before God will not kneel before bureaucrats. A man who serves a higher law will not lick the boots of HR. A man with faith is dangerous because he cannot be fully owned. And danger is what this age needs. Not more compliant consumers. Not more therapist speak. Not more comfort zombies. But dangerous men. Men who answer to something higher. Men who reject sedation. Men who look the system in the eye and say, "You will not own me." That's the radical thing about faith. It's not a retreat. It's a rebellion. It tells you that your suffering can be endured, your purpose can be found, your identity is given, not manufactured. And once you accept that, you stop chasing the grind like a lab rat. You stop apologizing for wanting meaning. You start living like you have one. The hunger for faith isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a larger revolt against modern weakness. Men are realizing that the same culture that told them to worship grind culture also told them to abandon tradition, mock stoicism, and treat wealth like a toy instead of a weapon. The result, an entire generation stripped of anchors. But here's the good news. Anchors can be rebuilt. Faith is the keystone, but it doesn't stand alone. To reclaim purpose, men are rediscovering three companions: stoicism, tradition, and wealth. Together with faith, these four are not a lifestyle brand. They're a fortress. Start with stoicism. The philosophy has exploded again for a reason. It tells you what the empire doesn't want you to hear. Life is suffering. Obstacles are inevitable. Control is a myth. And yet, your response to this chaos is always yours. This is why it resonates so hard with young men drowning in anxiety. It offers a simple, brutal promise. You can't escape pain, but you can endure it. You can't control others, but you can rule yourself. You can't avoid death, but you can live, so that when it comes, you're unafraid. That kind of resilience terrifies the system, because the entire modern economy runs on fragility. Social media runs on outrage. Pharma runs on medicating your despair. Politicians run on your fear. If you're calm, unshaken, disciplined, you stop being profitable. You stop being easy to herd. That's why stoicism feels rebellious today. Not because it's edgy, but because it makes you sovereign in a world designed to keep you reactive. But stoicism alone risks turning men into cold machines. It teaches you to endure, but not why. That's where faith comes in. Faith gives suffering meaning. It tells you your trials are not random noise, but part of a story that transcends your little ego. It reminds you that life is not just about enduring, but about becoming. And when you weld stoic composure to faith's transcendence, you get something the empire cannot break. A man who can endure anything because he knows his pain has purpose. Now add tradition. Modernity mocks tradition as outdated, oppressive, irrelevant, but tradition is survival code. It asks the tested wisdom of ancestors who faced realities harder than ours and built systems to endure. Family, honor, discipline, rites of passage. These weren't arbitrary. They were the scaffolding that kept civilizations alive. Strip them away, and men drift. They invent identities that change weekly. They chase pleasures that leave them empty. They collapse into nihilism. And when men drift, civilizations collapse. That's why every regime hell-bent on power attacks tradition first. Break the family, break the codes, break the continuity, and you can reshape people into compliant consumers. But men are waking up. They're realizing that tradition isn't chains, it's a foundation. It's what roots you so you're not blown away by every new cultural storm. It's what ties you to your ancestors and makes you accountable to your descendants. Without tradition, you're a leaf in the wind. With it, you're a tree. And then comes wealth. The system loves to dangle wealth as a carrot, but only as consumer wealth. They want you to see money as toys, as status symbols, as flexes. Buy the car, buy the watch, buy the lifestyle, and stay chained to the grind to keep paying for it. That kind of wealth is a leash. But real wealth, sovereign wealth is different. It's not about flexing. It's about freedom. It's about leverage. A poor man with values can resist, but he's vulnerable. A wealthy man with values is unbreakable. He doesn't beg the state for scraps. He doesn't tremble before HR. He doesn't need the system's approval. He funds his own life, his own family, his own community. He builds alternatives instead of begging for reform. That's why the ruling class fears men who understand wealth as power. Because once you own yourself economically, you stop being their subject. Faith, stoicism, tradition, wealth, alone, each is strong. Together, they are unstoppable. They give you transcendence, composure, continuity, and leverage. That's not just a lifestyle. That's a parallel civilization waiting to be built. And that's what terrifies the ruling order most. Because the collapse of meaning is not total. It's selective. Weak men collapse. Strong men adapt. Weak men medicate the void. Strong men fill it with purpose. Weak men die with nothing but consumer toys. Strong men leave legacies. This is the fork in the road. You can stay sedated in the modern script. Grind until you burn out, consume until you're broke, distract yourself until you're dead. Or you can walk the narrow path. Faith, stoicism, tradition, wealth. It's harder. It demands more. But it delivers what the empire cannot, meaning sovereignty, strength, and once you taste it, there's no going back. Every empire that collapsed believed it was immortal. Rome thought its aqueducts and armies made it eternal. The Soviet Union thought its ideology made it unshakable. Today's West thinks its tech, its GDP, and its bureaucratic machine make it invincible. But you don't need to read history books to know the truth. You just need to walk outside. Look at the hollow eyes, the obese bodies, the collapsing families, the sterile classrooms, the hopeless young. This is not invincibility. This is decline. And at the center of that decline is the meaning crisis. Not just for you personally, but for civilization itself. Because civilizations are built on stories, and the West has burned through its own once. It told men they were builders, protectors, conquerors, fathers, pioneers. Now it tells them they're consumers, employees, replaceable units in a spreadsheet. It tells them masculinity is toxic, tradition is outdated, faith is superstition, stoicism is cringe. It tells them their ancestors were villains and their descendants don't matter. And then it wonders why men are collapsing into despair. But collapse is not destiny. Collapse is opportunity. Because every dying empire leaves behind men who refuse to die with it. Men who hear the emptiness and say, no, there must be more than this. Men who reclaim what was stolen, faith, stoicism, tradition, wealth. Men who live differently, dangerously, unapologetically. Faith anchors you vertically to God, to eternity, to something higher than the empires do. Stoicism anchors you internally to composure, to sovereignty, to strength in the face of chaos. Tradition anchors you horizontally to ancestors and descendants, to codes that survive storms. Wealth anchors you materially to independence, to leverage, to the power to build without asking permission. Together, they form the only fortress left standing in a collapsing culture. This is not theory. It is war, a quiet war, fought not with armies, but with choices. Every man who kneels to faith instead of politics. Every man who lives with stoic composure instead of emotional fragility. Every man who honors tradition instead of chasing trends. Every man who builds sovereign wealth instead of begging for scraps. That man is a rebel. That man is the enemy of the empire. That man is what the future depends on. And make no mistake, the future will not remember the consumers. It will not remember the guys who scrolled endlessly, who posted memes instead of building families, who worked themselves into burnout for corporations that never cared. The future will remember the builders. It will remember the men who refused sedation, who turned obstacles into fuel, who carried faith, stoicism, tradition, and wealth like torches through the darkness. That can be you. Not someday, not when the system gives you permission. Now it begins with small choices. Rising early instead of snoozing. Training your body instead of numbing it. Praying instead of spiraling. Investing instead of consuming. Honoring your father and mother instead of mocking them. Mentoring younger men instead of competing with them. Every small act is a strike against the empire of weakness. And over time, those strikes add up. A man becomes a family. A family becomes a community. A community becomes a movement. A movement becomes a civilization. That is how renewal begins. Not with slogans, not with votes, not with revolutions staged for television, but with men who choose meaning over sedation. So the question is not whether meaning exists. It does. The question is whether you will seize it. Will you live as a consumer or as a builder? Will you worship brands or worship God? Will you drown in distractions or rise in discipline? Will you pass nothing to your descendants or will you pass a legacy of strength? The empire of weakness wants you tame. Be untamable. The empire of mediocrity wants you forgotten. Be unforgettable. The empire of comfort wants you dead inside. Be fully, dangerously alive. History is waiting. The story isn't over. This was the Anarchist File.